All right. Hola, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Strange. I am your host, Dave Cruz, and we are coming to you from the Napa Valley wine country, just outside the mystical Sonoma Mountains. Thank you for joining us. It is Sunday, December 16th, 2018, last show of the year. It's actually on a rainy evening tonight, and man, a whole lot has happened big time. Over the last couple of months, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I do want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy Yule. And for those of you that believe in the solstice and do all that kind of stuff, Happy Solstice to you as well. Follow us on Twitter at Strange Days 2015, and we are trending with the hashtag Beyonders for posts, comments, and questions for the show. And make sure to subscribe to the Beyond the Strange YouTube channel. And remember, set your alerts to receive new notifications of videos and live streams. Please remember to visit the website at www.beyondthestrange.com for links and information of future shows and events. Never know when we're going to do a giveaway. Might maybe give away a shirt, t-shirt, a book, author's book, something. Usually happens once in a while, so stay posted and go to www.beyondthestrange.com. Find the show on Facebook, Instagram, Google+. All the links are on the webpage, and you can also find the podcast for the later shows on iTunes, Google Play, Spreaker, and Stitcher. And finally, remember that you can help the show by donating, and you can go to the web page. There's a donation button right there. Also, there's some information about some miracle oil. I don't want to get into what it's called exactly and what it does for you, because for some reason that's infringement or whatever, right? I can't remember how it goes. I'm probably saying that wrong, but I don't care. Anyways, it is what it is. So just go visit the website. Everything's all there. All right, enough of that. Let's get into the show. I'm going to introduce my guest tonight is Michael Freehawk Polani. Michael has had firsthand experience with crop formations and is best known for his work on what came to be known as the Chandler Formation in Chandler, Arizona. Because of the Arizona crop formations, Michael had the pleasure of working in conjunction with well-known researchers such as Linda Moulton Howe, Nancy Talbott, and the late biophysicist Dr. William Levengood. As a result of Michael's discovery and research of the Chandler Formation, he was invited to be a guest speaker at numerous engagements, which includes Phoenix and Marin, Sonoma MUFON'S, Dr. Chet Snows' Science of Destiny conference, and various radio shows. He's also went on to become a co-creator of the Phoenix Rising Group's conference titled Embracing Contact in Scottsdale, Arizona. You can find Michael Freehawk Polani on Facebook at https://www.facebook.com/Michael.Polani. And everyone, help me welcome Michael Freehawk Polani on the show. Michael, thank you for being with me tonight on Beyond the Strange.
Yes, thanks for having me, Dave. Really appreciate it on this rainy day.
Yeah, I'm actually glad we're actually getting some rain tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I had my doubts. They said it was coming yesterday, and there was nothing. So you know how I feel about that.
Right. And, tonight's topic doesn't help either, because we're going to get into that. And I'm always leery every time I see planes in the air right before we're supposed to have some rain,
Right.
And you know how it goes. So
yeah, rightfully so.
Yeah. So anyways, let's do a little background from your research, Michael, and what got you into some of these topics.
Well, as you know, my background is pretty much in paranormal stuff, crop circles, UFOs, things like that. And the topic that we'll address tonight, I mean, I've been following, like so many other people, since at least the late 1990s, and I'll go so far as say 98, 99. You know, I lived a short time in the Antioch, Brentwood area.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was out there, I attended a conference held by a friend of mine, Brian Hall. And it was a conspiracy conference. And that weekend, it enlightened me, but it put me in a funk for quite some time. There was Dr. Len Horowitz, a gentleman named, what's his name? I'm drawing a blank. William is his first name, that's for sure. And they talked about geoengineering and chemtrails, and a gentleman named Clifford Carnicom, which is still in the mix here. He's not out in public much, but Clifford, he still has a great website. Just type in his name as well. I was blown away that weekend, and what I was seeing in the sky was exactly what they were talking about. There was some kind of manipulation of the weather, and back then I didn't quite know the extent of it or what it was about. You know, who, why, what, where type of thing. And I've been observing for all these years and taking pictures, and now we know that there's a lot of information out there, and unfortunately the majority of the information that we see now is debunked. You know, I've been told to put on or take off my tinfoil hat on more than one occasions, but you know, there's a lot of evidence and a lot of you know, tangible proof as to what's going on.
You know, I totally agree with that. And see, I didn't really start looking up in the skies till maybe about 10 years ago. And like we were talking about earlier, what I think happens is society gets so busy, they get so distracted with what's really happening that nobody really, you know, makes time or takes time to just stop and see what's going on around their surroundings.
True.
And so when I finally looked up, I started seeing little weird cloud formations. They're the typical, what they call sun dogs or sun dogs or something like that.
Right.
And they're like these little kind of cloud misty things, but they're different colors.
Right.
They're almost like rainbow color.
Yeah.
And those I don't remember seeing when I was growing up. I don't remember seeing anything like that in my teenage years or even my young adult years. Wasn't until I started getting into like my late 30s, early 40s, I started seeing this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really raised a lot of questions for me. And, you know, wouldn't you know it, I started running into more people who were questioning the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen the sun dogs on many occasions, and it's like you said, it's this oil slick type of prismatic effect that you see in the sky on what we would call a heavy spray day. And really that prismatic effect is what's being created by the chemical aspect. Now, some people go, well, you know, rainbows are not chemical aspect and there's colors there. Excuse me, that's true. But there's some subtle differences in some of the things that we're seeing.
Right. And, you know, it's basically the same thing you would see with a rainbow, but with rainbow, see, I don't know the complete science when it comes to the sun dogs, but I know that it's not natural ice crystals that are in the air that form those colors in the air. But it is, you know, basically kind of the same thing as it is with rainbows. You know, I started seeing those, and I noticed that we also started getting these really weird trails, which, you know, were described to me as contrails in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And You know, contrails are precipitation, or they're these little, well, not little, but they're these trails that basically come out of planes as they go by.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, the freezing of ice crystals, kind of
freezing,
like your car on a cold day when you're driving down the
exactly.
street, and you'll see the condensation from your tailpipe, except that condensation from the tailpipe kind of follows your car. It doesn't, go on for miles behind you, and if that happens, then that's not condensation. That's something else.
Right. And you know, this is this whole phenomenon, you know, it just seems to get pushed under the rug, and there will be a lot of people who try to debunk it, and they come out. And the problem with that is I don't think there's enough people that are informed, like down to a science level, about what is actually happening in the air and what's coming out of these planes.
Right.
Also, there's really not a whole lot of footage out there that shows what they're putting in these planes or rockets. Sometimes I think they're rockets actually that are going up in the sky.
Right. And I know of situations like that where small rockets, not so much large commercial airline sized, but those were used years ago, and I think they currently are in some instances with cloud seeding. And I think that's really where the story begins with what we're seeing, is the playing with the weather. And again, a lot of people get in these arguments and they talk about, this is a contrail, this is a chemtrail, and to be honest, we're really just at the mercy of what we're seeing in the sky at that time. And it's a hypothesis, it's just an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it really got me. You and I spoke briefly about, hey, maybe we should do something like this, because it's been kind of burning a hole in me over here with this onset of climate change, and all of a sudden these new postulations of, what, I think we're going to create something brand new, and we're going to spray this stuff in our sky to help the climate issue. And when people hear that and believe it, they're simply unaware of how long this has actually been going on.
Yeah. And remember the video that I sent you the link to, which was the Frankenskies documentary by Matt Landman and his organization. Amazing video, amazing documentary. Putting that together as best as he could to describe what's happening, and with evidence, though.
Right.
The people that are out there that want to make this something that's normal, and it's not normal. This is not normal. And I talked to a lot of people about chemtrails and geoengineering and climate change and all this stuff. And for one thing, there is definitely climate change going on. Okay, right. There's a lot of people that said climate change is not real and this and that. Well, no, it is real. It is getting hotter, and we are seeing like these little mini winter storms that are getting worse and worse every year. So right. There's definitely something happening in our weather pattern, in our climate pattern. What is causing that exactly, I don't know, but I do believe that these chemtrails have something to do with it. And the fact that our sun is acting really bizarre these last few years, it's undeniable something's really happening out there.
Yeah, it's true.
But for some of these sociopaths that want to send more chemtrails in the sky to block out the sun, which is their agenda, and it is happening next year. It's being put out there in the mainstream. I believe I want to say it's Forbes.
Mm-hmm.
Forbes, which is a mainstream, well accepted press magazine,
Right.
that's been out there forever, talks about this. That Harvard, Harvard wants to do this with a man called David Keith. His name is David Keith.
Right.
There's some other people involved in this, and they basically want to throw out a bunch of debris. I don't even know where they're getting it. They don't. That's the thing, is they don't even talk about how safe it is, how harmful it is. They don't. They just say, well, this is what we want to do because this is what's going to save the world, regardless of whether it's going to hurt us or not. And that's where I have a problem.
Right. Exactly. And that's why, as I said earlier, that's what really triggered me, because, tons of us have been observing this for years, and for them to come out right now and say something like that, to say, okay, here's the issue, and we are going to offer a solution, and the great David Icke, he has said these things for years and years about the system that they work under, the problem, reaction, solution. The same people who are creating disease or creating chaos are magically the same individuals who are going to provide the solution. And they're getting paid on both ends, but it's not all about money. That's a byproduct of their grab for money, power, greed, control, basically, is all that it's about. And if the money comes, that's just icing on the cake for them.
Mm-hmm.
So these projects are so far-reaching, and as you said, they don't take humanity into consideration, nor Mother Earth. And there's no trials of these things. They just do it, and there's no oversight. And that is why it's so important to get this out. Yes. And to educate people, because there are, people say, oh, you're being overly dramatic about this. No, these are literally crimes against humanity. We're
Yes.
being sprayed with, like you said, whether it's aluminum, barium, strontium. These are all the main ingredient players in this program. Back in the day, there was other things, silver iodide, things like that, to seed clouds, and we'll go more into that in a little while. But all these things come down eventually. They come from the sky and they come down into our soil, into our lungs. Many of these things are nanoparticle sized. And boy, even some of those things are very hard to cleanse or detoxify out of the system. And that's really what we've come to a point where we have to do on a daily basis. Just like we shower our external body, we're going to have to be put into a situation now that internally we need to start taking care of detoxifying ourselves on a regular basis, because as long as this is going on, we have no choice but to do that.
Right. Now, and another thing is people have been researching a disease called Morgellons.
Right.
Morgellons disease is it's a horrible skin. Not only is it skin, but I believe it's also in your bones, and it just causes all kinds of stuff. But there's been some link to Morgellons disease and to chemtrails.
Right.
This disease virtually was not anywhere on Earth until they started noticing these chemtrails in the sky.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, there's something that could be to it, that's tied to it. And a lot of people talk about how the nanoparticles that are in the chemtrails are already in our system. And unfortunately, it's very possible that we are all susceptible to this Morgellons disease.
Right. Absolutely. And, that hits a little close to home for me. And as you know, I'm in the health and wellness industry, and I my place of business, I see people where I work all the time. And one woman, customer of mine years ago, and I'd say up to 7 years ago, she came into the store, and everybody thought she was always a little bit off, a little bit extravagant and over the edge. And her and I really hit it off well, because what she was telling me sounded like she was suffering from Morgellons. And at the time, she hadn't heard of this. Not many people had heard of this. I only heard about it from my circle of friends and the people that I associate with. And our conversation went into a couple hours at my job, on the phone outside of work. And I gave her a couple names of people, doctors who would not laugh at her, not call it psychosomatic. It's all in your head. Oh, she's a little off. She needs to. No, not at all. That was not the case. And she showed me some of the lesions that she had. They were on her body. They were on her scalp. And some of the characteristics of the Morgellons is that there literally looks like there are fibers coming out of the wounds that you have on your skin. Some people also talk about the very center of that wound. There is something poking out of that looks fibrous, but under a microscope or under a any high magnification tool shows that something is actually poking out and going back in, like it's a biological thing. There's something alive. And when you start hearing that, that's kind of like a biological issue, biological weapon, something well beyond what the mainstream is aware of, let alone the public.
Right. They won't even talk about it. I haven't heard anything about Morgellons in any mainstream media. And I I'm not saying that it's not there. That's not what I'm saying. Right. What I'm saying is I haven't heard it. As with a lot of things that the mainstream media doesn't present, because there's a lot of things that mainstream won't put out there for the public. Now, a good and I'll give you an example. The last 2 weeks, there's been riots in France.
Yes,
and I've been seeing this all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, different alternative media outlets. I hadn't heard a peep until probably maybe 2 days ago from one of the local the news reporters, news shows. And I'm just like, wow, they're just now starting to to actually report this. Right. But it's been in the the social media and alternative news for like the last about 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Now, what have they been showing all that whole time? They've been showing Daddy Bush funeral. All and what's been happening while that's been going on. Let's see, our stock market has been crashing. President Trump has been. There's a lot of things been happening with politics. I can go on and on. I mean,
it's true.
It's just they don't. They try to cover up and hide what what's really happening, and they want to show you what they want to show you.
Right. It's the controlled media, and you would think that mentality would fly in the face of real journalism. Mm-hmm. Well, it actually does, because there is no real journalism anymore. There is a spokesperson of this corporation or a spokesperson for that, where they're just regurgitating the mainstream narrative. Mm-hmm. So there really is no journalism in that sense anymore, unless you go to the alternative media outlets. Right. And of course, those are all looked at and viewed as fake news. Not everything out there is true, but I can tell you that there are some people who are reporting on these very important topics. But it's the case of, we have free speech, but the power structures above us have the control of who hears that free speech. So it's a very daily uphill battle that those of us who are trying to get truth out there, it's an uphill battle. But you know what? I think you and I both know that it's gotten to the point where the truth, it can't be hidden forever.
No.
I mean, it's going to come out, and nobody ever said that the truth coming out is going to be an easy transition either. It's going to be very rough. And France right now, that's what we're seeing, and that's why they're not putting it on mainstream, because they don't want to give us, any ideas of, wow, you know what? I'm kind of in the same situation as they are, and you know what? I'm going to do this too. I'm fed up. I've had it. And that's why you're seeing all the diversions that you mentioned.
Right. By the way, I just quickly want to say hello to everyone that's in the chat right now. Thanks for joining us. We have Cherie Ariano, who's been one of my past guests and a friend of mine. Thank you for showing up. Matt, thanks for showing up, buddy. I appreciate it. We also have Chris Belvedere, who's in there, and we have also a few other people who are listening right now. Thank you very much for joining us. And for those of you I just tuned in, I'm speaking with Michael Freehawk Polani, who's a researcher and experiencer. And we're going to talk about some other things besides chemtrails, but we definitely want to get this out right now because it's really important. I'm going to switch over the screen real quick, Michael, and
okay,
we did this earlier. We could talk about this,
right? Because you can see me now, correct?
Yeah, I can see you, and they're just looking at my little logo eyeball there. With,
right.
But that's okay because I have, anyways, I just right now I can't show my camera, but we'll do that later sometime.
Right.
Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and share the screen really quick.
Okay.
Now, over here, I have already pulled it up, and what I wanted to show to everyone is the other day I posted in Facebook on the Beyond the Strange Facebook page, and I wrote, for those of you that feel that chemtrails are is just a conspiracy, let me ask you a question: why do people want to discount it so much? If only 5% of Americans believe that government is hiding it, then why try to discredit people's research into chemtrails and geoengineering? In my last video I did about the California wildfires, which also links, in my opinion, to chemtrails and other weather weaponizing and manipulation devices, I found that YouTube has been putting a heading on my video. And I took snapshots of them, and I'll show you what they look like here. So I'm going to go ahead and go through these real quick. Now, this is a snapshot of my phone. This is, and up here is where the video on the YouTube app comes up, and then the description and all the other stuff, information on the bottom. But right here, right above the title of the show, is this little advertisement almost, but it's not an advertisement. It just says contrail. And it says contrail, also called condensation trails or vapor trails. And then it gives you a link to click on there so you can learn more about contrails. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? It's like, why did they put that there?
Wow.
So I went ahead and I clicked on the link, and it tells you what the contrail is. It says alternative titles: condensation trail, vapor trail.
Wow.
Tells about the people who wrote it and the information. Gives you a little picture of the trails that are going by with the plane in the air. Then up here, this is what gets me, Michael. It says, did you know about 5% of Americans believe that governments secretly spray harmful chemicals via planes?
Wow.
Scientists state that they have never found evidence of government chemtrails and that observed trails from planes are simply water vapor.
Wow.
It goes on to talk about contrail, and it gives you the definition and all that stuff, saying that it's a streamer of clouds sometimes observed behind an airplane flying in a clear, cold, humid air. Forms upon condensation of water vapor produced by the combustion of the fuel in the airplane engine, and goes on and on.
Gee whiz. That's a little scary.
And I I asked myself, if people are, if people don't believe that that these are not real chemtrails, that this is just basically water vapor forming into crystals, why are they going out of their way, especially YouTube? Why are they going out of their way to discredit and disprove what we're talking about? It to me it doesn't make sense, but maybe you can kind of give me some insight.
Well, first of all, I'm blown away by that. That's that's not even covert. I mean, that's so overt. That's number one. That's the the big brother of today that we see, that just chimes in, that can not only give their 2 cents, but they can interject something that you've done on your page and suggest otherwise, saying, no, this isn't true. I'm going to tell you that's not so. And everybody reading this, don't have to worry about that because what he's posting isn't accurate and not true. And then they bring in scientists into that. Wow, that's to me, that's an admission of guilt. To me, that's somebody just trying to get their foot in the door and throw the diversion and say, hey, don't look over there, look over here real quick. The old sleight of hand. And that's what we're seeing, and that's right there on your own page.
Yeah, and the beginning of this year, there had been what a lot of people were calling the YouTube purge. A lot of people, a lot of truthers were getting their channels axed from YouTube because YouTube didn't like what they were saying, or people weren't like what they were saying. And it's basically all these trolls who are coming out and talking smack about what those people are trying to, the message that they're trying to get across. And so YouTube basically yanks them from the channel, and that's not right, in my opinion. I mean,
no,
they have a policy what basically says they can do whatever they want. And that's the thing, is they can.
Right. I mean, it takes censorship to a whole nother level. It's there is no privacy anymore. I mean, there's people watching that are not logged in as some of our viewers probably right now. It's it's how it is. It's the new norm. And like you said earlier, I think you touched upon they're trying to normalize it. They're trying to just say, if you don't have anything to hide, then don't worry about it. No, that's not the point. The point is we have a right, to our privacy, and we have a right to put things on our page like that. And obviously they have something to say about that, and it's pretty overt.
I don't understand why these people have to do that. And I understand if it's something that they strongly believe that's not true, like say, Bigfoot is not a real creature, or ghosts don't exist or whatever like that. But when you have something like this that's in the air every day now, because it didn't used to be every day.
No.
But you have it every day now. And you can see these little trails start to spread, start to become clouds. And then we either get rain, or for some reason, when the weatherman says we're going to have rain, you see these clouds, and then the next thing you know, we don't have rain.
Right. Right. Either they're predicting rain right down literally to the hour, like 5 o'clock, we're going to get rain today.
Mm.
Okay. And then it's the rain, like you said, that we don't get, because the drought that we've, been in for seems like years now.
Mm.
There's something about the California coast that we get the high pressure, we get the weather systems that come in, and they manifest into a jet stream of some kind, and it brings rain, especially seasonally.
Mm.
But now, in the age of weather modification, they have a way of breaking up that rain and that potential of rain before it hits land. And we've seen that time and time again. Yes, it can happen naturally, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about things that are literally replacing our normal weather patterns. And again, here's what we find. Not only is the tool that could be doing this and creating these droughts, creating who gets rain and who does not get rain, now we're seeing that they want the same type of technology to be the answer to our problems. So again, it's the problem, reaction, solution. It's insane.
Now, I remember when we were having these California wildfires, it started with the campfire, and then it started spreading over into Paradise and all these other communities, unfortunately. And my heart goes out to them, and, God bless them.
Absolutely.
I remember that a lot of people were praying for rain, and a lot of different faiths. I don't really like to call them religions. I call them faiths.
Right.
In their own way, they all prayed for rain, whether they meditated or actually, prayed or whatever.
Right.
I remember seeing on your Facebook page that you had gone to a rally of some sorts that was like Native American, or it was a Native American video that you posted.
Correct.
And that we should all do this, either play it or watch it, and in some way maybe even meditate on it. And sure enough, maybe about either if not the same day or the next day, we got rain right after that.
Correct. Yeah, I believe it was within 48 hours.
Right. Exactly.
And that's it's funny because first, thank you for mentioning that, because I think, and that's something that everybody could do. We are powerful beings, and we can change things. As you know, the indigenous have been, the rainmakers of old. They literally did the rain dances, and they did the chanting and the drumming, and I try to embody that, and walking the red road as much as I can, because I believe that's the way to save a lot of the planet. Now, I think personally, Mother Earth is probably going to be fine, but I think we're here to be the stewards and to help her with that and bear some of that load. But the indigenous knew how that worked, and really, what you're doing when you're chanting and drumming, you are emoting an energetic field. And whether people want to call that a frequency, a vibration, changing the barometric pressure, what have you, they're similar to the same principles that we see today that bring about rain. Of course, intention is very important as well.
Yes.
And really, that's just what inspired me to do that, because I practice that in my day-to-day. But that was a really important time to do that. And it was like, okay, you know what, let's go back to how it was, and let's just forget all this technology. I mean, we are technology. We are the original computers, and everything that's external to us was built around the human being and that inner technology that we all have. And I think that's time that we start tapping back into that.
Before you start I know there were some things you wanted to share as well on your screen, which is I'm actually looking forward to seeing those images and some of your research. But I wanted to ask you, I didn't get a chance to ask you this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
When you because you're of native descent, of course, and I wanted to ask you is, do you get to talk to any elders?
Yes and no, not recently.
Mm-hmm.
Although there is still a very large active, of course, population here in the Bay. I mean, all this land is native land.
Of
And I love
course.
it. I love it when people say, "Oh, this area over here, that used to be native land."
That's amazing.
It was all native land. This
Right.
is all native land. Um, when I and as you said, yeah, on my mom's side, there's Cherokee. My dad's side is Italian. Hence the contrast of Freehawk and then Polani.
Mm-hmm.
I get that question a lot. While living in Arizona throughout the 2000s, I did get a chance to talk to a lot of elders about various things, and mostly around the Sedona area, where I spent a lot of time in the valley as well, but a lot of time in Sedona for the spiritual community. We talked about the star nations, what we call extraterrestrials now, the crop formations,
Mm-hmm.
the weather. I mean, we did touch upon that, talking about how things have changed, and a lot of Hopi prophecies talked about the times that we're facing now. We would see great spider webs throughout the skies, and to me that speaks of chemtrails. Some people talked about it was webs that represent grandmother spider throughout the sky. The more I look into it, the more it looks like what we're seeing now is the trail
Right. Right.
sky. So the Hopi, the Navajo, um, they all knew about this, and been trying to tell us for ages, that what road to follow to avoid this time. But yeah, the elders are well aware of it, and I think at this point, a lot of them just believe, wow, nobody is listening. And
Mm-hmm.
but for those who do ask them and do the research, there are a lot of people listening out there. But again, you wouldn't know that by what we see in our mainstream.
Totally agree with that. I think that more people need to talk to their elders and
Yeah.
get their opinions and listen to their stories of days before all of this that didn't happen. We didn't have a lot of this stuff that's happening today. We
Right.
earlier we were talking about our food supply and how different it is today than it was 50 years ago, and how people are getting all these different diseases like heart
Yeah.
disease and diabetes
Mm-hmm.
and if you talk to your families, elders like their grandparents or whatever, they're still living to be 80, 90, almost 100 years old.
Right.
The same foods that they were eating, and when they start making the foods here, people start making that food here, and people start getting those diseases,
Right.
and so it's not in the way it's prepared or even what the food should be. It's what it is today, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
even we were talking about the red meat and being vegetarian, how sometimes we need some of those nutrients from different sources, but
Right.
what we have today is totally different. What you get at the supermarket as opposed to what you get off the farm, free range, that kind of thing,
Correct.
organic. And I believe, and we both concur that this has a lot to do with what's in the air and what's going into our water
Right.
sources, and it's trickling down into our animals. Um, it's almost like there's no escape from this. I mean, I don't like to be a downer, but at the same time, I think people need to be aware
Right.
that this is happening, and
Yeah.
we really need to do something about it, because our children and our children's children, they're not going to have a future.
No. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the first generation that is not expected to outlive their parents.
That's another thing. That's, that's horrible.
Yeah, it really is. And it's all of the things that are being introduced into our environment. The waters weren't tainted, back in the days of the indigenous. You had pristine water. Your magnetics of the planet were very different. Your air quality was very different. The food naturally was different because of that. The vegetables, the soil was not depleted like it is today. The animals that roamed, the plains were eating of the amazing vegetation that was here. So, like you said, it just trickles down through the food supply, the food chain into our bodies. And, we are a reflection of this earth. I mean, our bodies are earth. If there are things that are toxic in our environment and toxic on this planet, we are a mirror and a recipient of that. We are going to mirror that toxicity.
Right.
And you're right. There is no way around it. And I don't like to be an alarmist myself, but we're getting to a point where it is no longer sustainable. Mother Earth is just like, I think I was mentioning to you about our liver. Our organs are very important. Our brain naturally is important. Our heart is important. Our liver is right there with everything. And, we are made to heal ourselves when given what we need to heal. But there is a point of no return from a biological standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And we really have to address that. Mother Earth can take a lot. And again, I think she'll be here a lot longer than we will. I think it'll be an environment that may no longer be able to sustain human life if this thing plays out to the worst case scenario. Well, I don't believe it has to play out to the worst case scenario. I'm an optimist in that area. And we have a lot of healing to do. And that goes for our environment, for our bodies, our relationships, everything. And as you know, that the turmoil in the world right now really has to do with the uncovering of this disease within humanity. And we are, I think, right in the middle of a healing crisis. And I think that's what we see in France right now. That is what a healing crisis looks like from a public civilian standpoint. Looks like you've had enough. It's time to purge what is making us ill and what is taking us down. And again, it's not a pretty process. People think it's going to be roses and everything nice, and it's not. It's ugly. It's tough. It's it's where we're at. And I hope, having discussions like this, whether it's here, Beyond the Strange, or other formats, forums is what I guess I was trying to say. We have to talk about this stuff, and we have to find a way to move beyond it, not around it, not jump over it,
Mm-hmm.
but move through it and integrate this and heal traumas and heal what ails us at this point. The time is now.
Very well said, Michael. And like I was stating before, I want to remind everyone that we're going to take a quick break here in a little bit, but when we come back, we're going to get into some more about this topic and some other research that you've done, and hopefully we can do a presentation on the screen so the people who are watching on YouTube can see what we're talking about. And earlier, I don't know what happened. I thought me and Michael were able to see the screen, but for some reason it froze on the other end. So I think we'll have a little bit more success
Right.
when we come back. But anyway, I do want to go to a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get into some more with chemtrails GeoEngineering, Morgellons, everything that's tied to this, along with some more research that Michael has been doing. Yeah, I mean, it's not all bad. We're in the holiday season, so let's get some more let's get some more cheers going on. So with that, this is Beyond the Strange. I am your host, Dave Cruz, and don't go away. We'll be right back right after this.
Hey, this is Deb, and you're listening to Dave Cruz on Beyond the Strange Radio.
I warn you, this could scare you, as the sound bothers me to listen to. It has always haunted me. What you're about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
I've seen the Martians eat.
What in heaven's name is it?
I don't know. Beyond the Strange.
Have you ever looked skyward and pondered UFOs, aliens, time travel, alternate universes, and parallel dimensions? Want to explore paranormal activities, ghost hauntings, various cryptoids, such as Bigfoot, sea and lake monsters? Greetings, Beyonders. I'm author Casper Parks, and you are listening to Beyond the Strange with host Dave Cruz. Help spread the word by posting links in forums and social media. Available at Speaker.com, YouTube, and Google Hangouts.
Hey, this is Deb, and you're listening to Dave Cruz on Beyond the Strange Radio.
I warn you, this could scare you, as the sound bothers me to listen to.
Welcome back. This is Beyond the Strange. I'm your host, Dave Cruz. Thank you all for being here tonight. And tonight we are speaking with Michael Freehawk Polani, who is a researcher and experiencer. And we're going to get into a little bit of that some more. Remember, you can go to beyondthestrange.com. Check out all the links there. We have the links to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. It's all under Beyond the Strange. So go to beyondthestrange.com. And while you're there, check out how you can support the show. And I'll have some more information. We also will be having a new website coming soon. I've been saying that forever, but it's really going to happen, and I'm really excited about it. So thank you all for coming out tonight. And yeah, I'm really grateful that we were able to talk to you before the end of the year. And, it's Christmas time. So, Merry Christmas to y'all, and, Happy Yule and Happy Solstice and all that, and Happy Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and what's the other one that they made up, Festivus for the rest of us. So yeah, and I just want to give a shout out to my homeboy Joe Roop, who has his show Lighting the Void Monday through Friday on the Fringe FM at 9 p.m. Pacific. Right on, Joe. I'm glad you're here tonight, man. And thanks, brother, for coming out. And I hope everything's okay with your family. And lots of prayers and lots of positive energy going your way, bro. So I'm sure we'll talk soon. But anyways, thank you for being here tonight, and everyone else. So Michael, we were talking about some of your research that you've been doing. Besides the chemtrail research, you also have delved into the crop circle phenomena, and that's really amazing. I've always been fascinated with crop circles, and and what they represent. What exactly is happening. So we did a show before for anyone who wants to go back and check it out. It was my first show with Michael. Actually, I take that back. We met at Lorian's conference,
right?
UFOCon. Yep.
Yeah.
And that was an awesome time, and I'm looking forward to going to next year. So hopefully,
right.
I'll see you there as well.
Yep, I should be there.
Right on. So I think that'll be great. But yeah, I first of all, you have some information, and quite possibly you can share that with us on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a few pictures that would kind of go along with the extent of this. And I think I wanted to make that point to our viewing and listening audience that we always get into this argument, like I said, about, is this trail a contrail, or is this one a chemtrail? What is this? And then the argument just kind of like begins and it ends right there. And there's really nothing learned from that. I'm kind of one who likes to put together a little bit of a timeline, to this, because what we're seeing, and this is what, if you take anything away from this show this evening, is that this has been going on a long time. And you find out that the chemtrails, now it's almost just like a chemtrail, it's a catchphrase, it's an aspect of geoengineering. People can debunk chemtrails all they want, but they have to remember chemtrails are just an aspect of geoengineering, weather modification. That is very, very real. So now I kind of view people who look at chemtrails and they go, oh, that's tinfoil hat stuff. No, it's not. It's an aspect of the much larger picture. And a lot of these people haven't even delved into the big picture because they don't want to see it. So that's kind of what I wanted to do tonight, was to really touch upon the history that's out there. And it's funny because I've had some people go, well, you should be a little careful, talk about this, because you're telling their secrets. No, I'm not. And any other researcher who's out there who is well versed on this topic knows probably the things that I'm going to say. The average person has no clue what I'm about to say, but the ones who have done their due diligence, this is all out there. This is online. You can search it. Why? Because these are real military projects. Some could say it's NASA projects. It's different. It's Air Force. They're real projects. They're documented. They happen. There's people there. There are people who may have been a casualty of a project. So this is very real. This is not just being a discerning white line in the sky. This goes well beyond that, and those white lines in the sky are just, years and years of what's actually been going on. So that's kind of what I want to touch upon.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any images you want to try to share on the screen, that'd be great.
Yeah, let's see. I know I had issues with that earlier. Let's see. So I would just go, I don't know how much the viewers can see or you can see if you're going to sort through all my personal stuff, but
well, we don't have to see that stuff.
Ooh, right. Well, I know. I don't think. Okay, let's see if I can just go right to. Okay, can you see that? Let's see. How about
on the bottom of the window? There should be a share button, if you will.
Yeah, where is that at?
It's right in the middle. If you look, it's like green. It should say share.
Oh, how weird.
Maybe not.
Okay, hold it.
And then you pick the screen that you want to share.
There we go. Okay.
There we go.
All right.
Awesome.
That's the first thing I wanted to show. So I'm going to click on the first thing. Okay. You got good visual on that?
Yes.
We're good? Okay. So for starters, like you mentioned, Dave, that what really prompted me to get together with you and do this, because I was triggered. I admit it. I'm a pretty a mellow guy and relaxed, and well, I was triggered this time, and I said, you know what, I need to put something together and talk about this. And me and you talked, and here we are. When they came out saying that, this is brand new, and you mentioned a gentleman named David Keith.
Yes.
He's been around and a major player in geoengineering for a very, very long time. And yeah, it's hard to believe, institutes like Harvard are the ones that are behind the majority of these projects, and that's mind-blowing. So it goes to show that just because you are extremely intelligent doesn't mean that you're very smart when it comes to things like these, because some of these things are absolutely insane, as you know. So recently, they have been given the green light. They, meaning these projects, David Keith involved, have been given the green light to disperse, particulates in the sky, which typically has to do with aluminum, horrible substance, barium, strontium, all the big players as far as ingredients goes with chemtrails, and spray the upper atmosphere with it in attempts to dim the sun, the very sun that we need to propagate life on this planet. They want to dim it. And what's interesting is that I heard that this program that has been given the green light is actually set to run for 100 years.
Wow.
It's a 100-year program. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Okay, again, with no oversight, with no okay, I didn't give consent. I don't know about anybody else, but where was the vote on this? And that is all an attempt to cool the Earth's temperatures. Well, something that we can touch upon later is, although there are some very high temperatures, and we talked about the natural ebb and flow of Mother Earth, and we can look at that with the ice core, samples that we've taken over the years, there is a natural flow to Mother Earth. We have hot weather, we have cool weather, there's the mini ice age, there's the ice age, and it's a living organism. The only argument that really was to be fought about in modern day right now is saying, well, what is the cause of the expediting of, not the fact that it's warming up or it's cooling down, that's natural, but are we doing things as human beings to propagate that and expedite it even faster? Well, the answer is yes, but the fact of Mother Earth changing temperatures and going in cycles has been going on since the beginning of time. So it's a little scary. Now, the first thing I wanted to talk about is how long this has actually been going on. Now, this slide that I have here for you, the seeding is cloud seeding. And they were doing this back in the 1940s. And there was numerous programs back in 1940 that had to do with seeding clouds. Silver iodide, that seems to be the main ingredient that was used years ago. And it's interesting that I had a little note here that I took earlier that the silver iodide was actually introduced in this, not specifically for cloud seeding, but introduced in this in the science of by Dr. Bernard Vonnegut, who, if that name sounds familiar, his brother was the famed author Kurt Vonnegut Jr., who's a very famous author. Well, Bernard Vonnegut was the one who was the what would I say, the creator of putting these two things together. And seeing what this slide shows is that they spray or drop silver iodide. Sometimes they used dry ice as well. And as you see, they put it in the clouds. Particles rise into the clouds, causes the freeze. And really what it does is it brings these liquid particles that clouds are made up of, and it brings them together, and they grow bigger. And when they are heavy enough, they fall to earth in the way of rain. Now, a lot of people were asking about, well, why would they want to, stop this in a way, seed it, and for what? A lot of these projects started in the area of Kansas, and Kansas, as you know, is notorious for very, very dangerous, damaging hailstorms. So back in the day, 1940s, 1950s, they ran projects over that area to stop the formation of hail. Farmers, agriculture in general, they hate hailstorms. It kills their crops. Insurance companies hate hailstorms. I mean, if you've ever seen anything on the news where you see these brand new car lots after a hailstorm.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine.
And these things are golf ball to softball size. And so these insurance companies were like, yes, if you can do something to stop this hail, absolutely, you have our support on that. And
so already they have some kind of partnership, some kind of agreement.
Exactly, and at least no resistance, no argument, because they look at how it affects them personally. And well, there's a whole world at stake here, and you're like, oh well, it's better for my crops. So yeah, it's a little bit disconcerting when you hear that. So really, the cloud seeding was back in, I would say, 1946. It was thought of, it was put together, and really they started to do cloud seeding projects starting in 46. What would I say? Probably about that same time in the 40s, moving into the 50s. Believe it or not, there was about 30 countries who were already experimenting with weather modification. And that wasn't just us in our military. And what's interesting is even back then, it was rumored that the Japanese used a specific storm cover when it came to the attack on Pearl Harbor. That's been rumored. I don't think there's any document that actually says that, but it was rumored quite a bit in the military circles, was my understanding. So with that, let me see if I can move. Let's see, how do I get back to where I just was? Let's see.
Now, is that picture kind of showing the process? The one that's kind of like in the preview right there?
Right. It can actually be done. If you notice on the left lower corner, there are machines that are capable of putting it up into the air.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, when this all started, they were flying planes directly into the clouds, unloading the silver iodide along with the dry ice. And that was the main method. And now the next one I wanted to show a picture of. This was pretty interesting considering I'm going to try to go in a little chronological order.
Okay.
People can look into, look into all of these because they are real projects. They're traceable. Military didn't run from them.
Mm-hmm. Michael, you want to try to, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but can you
Sure.
try to double click on the picture and see if it'll get a little bit bigger maybe?
Okay. Okay, that just got really big on my end. I don't know about your end.
Yeah, no, I'm not. It still looks like it's in a preview type window, but that's all right. That's we can figure it out later.
Interesting. Yeah, because these are pretty good. I mean, if it's visible, or is it? Hopefully, it's not the size of a stamp, is it?
Well, in the preview section, it's a little bit bigger, but yeah, it's mainly like your icons that we can see.
Oh wow.
The picture of your file there.
Right. Interesting. Well, I wish. Okay. Well.
It's all right. We can definitely, we can see it. So if you want to continue to describe it, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I will. In that, this slide shows Project Cirrus. Now, Cirrus was all the way back in right about this time. It was 1947, October 13th. The significance of this one is that there was a tropical storm coming up, as you can see from that path. That was coming up from Florida, heading up towards Georgia, South Carolina coast. This storm, not even a hurricane yet, was going out to sea. It was on its way out. And if you can see where Project Cirrus, where they have that little arrow pointed to the part in the pathway there, they used this tropical storm as an experiment. And they put in 180 pounds. Personally, I think it's a lot more, and probably a few other things in it of dry ice. And they dropped that by aircraft into the tropical storm. Well, what happened is that it abruptly changed course. It no longer went out. It made a U-turn and it went right back into it made landfall. Now, this one, let's see, I have to say it was probably, was it Savannah, I believe. Savannah, Georgia got nailed by this. Now, remember, this is a storm that was on its way out. So no chance of it coming back in at that time. They brought it back in. Now, I can't say it was intentional, but they were using it as an experiment to say, hey, let's see what happens. Well, it turned right around, hit land, and I would say there was numerous planes involved where it says it was only by aircraft, which it doesn't say 1 or 10. Well, they seeded it, it came back, hit the coast of Savannah, and there was 1 death reported from that. There was 4,000 displaced people who were looking for shelter, basically, and 1,500 structures were damaged from this hurricane slash tropical storm. And it did pick up speed. And now, when you think of things like this, you can't help but think about Katrina, what we saw in the Gulf where Houston was involved, Miami, all of these hurricanes now that are acting very peculiar. Yes, hurricanes exist. Yes, tropical storms exist. the characteristics of these hurricanes are changing very rapidly to the point where they look like they're lessening in category, and then they just stop and hover over a place and dump. And when they're done dumping, then they continue to move on. And, you know, the things that we're talking about can achieve this. And this is really what's very scary, because from the 1940s, we are seeing this being used as a weaponizing agent, basically. That's the scary part. And I know there was something that I had written down here. This gentleman, I thought it was really interesting. There was a book back in 1970, no, maybe 1968. And he talked about, I don't have the exact words, but said, you know, if man can weaponize the weather, he will.
Oh yeah.
And basically do it with no regards of the lives and the people that it destroys, if it's in the name of national security and things of that nature. So not a good thing. Now, one of these pictures, I could not. It wouldn't allow me to get any real good pictures on this. I can see that it's not here, unfortunately. So I'll just talk about that because the picture is no longer here. Back in 1952, this was a pretty bad one in the UK. It's known, like, even if you bring up Project Cumulus, which people can write down these names and research it themselves as well. Project Cumulus was a project in 1952 in the UK, and it came to be known as the Lynmouth floods. I think it's Lynmuth. And those floods were the result of, the Royal Air Force playing around with the weather, and they seeded a storm, and this little town of Lynmouth basically almost all washed away. There's some really amazing pictures online, and like I said, I had one on here, and it went off into cyberspace somewhere. But the sad part about this is that there was torrential rains that weren't even forecasted, and it went on for hours and hours. Within 24 hours, that village was essentially just wiped out, and everybody in it. And when you do the research on that, of course, they're going to say, you can't prove that that's what happened, but they never ever denied, oh yeah, there was operations going on at that time of cloud seeding and manipulating the weather to see what would happen. Now, unfortunately, with that one, there was roughly, I think they said 35 fatalities with that. So again, we're getting into, crimes against humanity. Like who's going to pay for this? Not financially, but legally. Like you just can't go around doing this. And we have deaths because of their actions, because of their experiments, because of things that allegedly don't exist. So they denied it all the way up until we get into the age of Vietnam. Now, what's interesting with Vietnam is there was a project or Operation Popeye. And again, everybody can research this. Now, Project Popeye was an entire project done in the Vietnam era from, I believe it was 66 up until 1972. Not many people know that they made approximately 2,600 runs at cloud seeding. And again, they're militarizing the weather. And that's the whole point of the weather modification, is that in wartime, there is nothing better than to make the enemy's terrain and their main transport roads impassable. And that's essentially what they did in Vietnam. They rendered everything it was mud. It was feet of mud. the main supply roads that the Viet Cong, everybody involved couldn't get out, and they extended the monsoon season is essentially what they did. And they talked about this, and this was in the news, and there's news articles on it. And that was even back then, and it got buried. But this went on from 1966 at least to 1972, and the I believe it was the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the famous trail. That's, people go, well, that's what Vietnam is like. It's just horrible weather and terrain. So they don't think twice about that. They don't think twice about, it rained a little bit more than usual. No, they just said that's just the terrain, and that is the way that the war went. And it's not. It was totally fabricated as far as the weather goes. 2,600 cloud seeding operations were done in Vietnam. You don't hear about that.
No, you don't hear about that. And that was going to be one of my questions to you is, when you research this, and again, I always encourage people and my viewers and listeners to please do your own research and formulate your own conclusions.
Right.
When you research this, does it come up like automatically, or do you have to really dig for this stuff?
Some actually come up very quickly, to be honest. And it's usually under geoengineering.
Right.
But I could tell you the reason I was having the trouble with Project Cumulus, that didn't come up under that name. But because I had known about the Linmouth floods, that was Project Cumulus that was attributed to those floods. So I had to type that directly because Cumulus wouldn't come up. Project Cirrus, Project Popeye, those all come up. And as you see, it's probably really small on your end now. This was a Sunday paper back in the day that said rainmaking used as weapon in Southeast Asia.
I can see it, yeah.
And that's nothing new. That is, and it's been out there. And these things are out there. And like you said, the majority of them, I don't want that. The majority of them are very easy to pull up. And not sure why that's asking me to do that. Okay, so there's your Project Popeye. They say 1967 to 72 there, but yeah, exactly. A lot of the planes, I think, were like C-130s was the military's plane of choice for a lot of these cloud seeding operations. But it's as easy as that. That's exactly what we're talking about. And I did want to show you, let's see, what was the other one? Let's see, I don't think I have a picture for that one. What's interesting about that era, 1967, the Vietnam era, was that the federal government, when you look back in the papers, now this is actually some research that people can look into as well. I don't take credit for all of this research that I'm about to say. A gentleman named, I think his name is Jerry Smith, I think his name was he's deceased now.
Mm-hmm.
An amazing researcher. And his book, I think it was The Weather Wars or Weather Wars Modification, something to that effect. He pointed out that the federal government back in 1967 allocated $12 million for these projects in 67. And then 30 million the following year in 1968. And then after that, they were looking at $40 million allotted for that in 1969. Now, roughly by 1970, there was $100 million allotted for these types of projects. So a lot of people these days say, well, where would they get the money to do that? It's got to be expensive. You got the fuel, the plane, you got the, there's too much. That would just cost too much. Well, Dave, you and I both know that the Pentagon even back in 2001, a day before 9/11, September 10th, Rumsfeld said, we were missing, was it 9 trillion? Correct me if I'm wrong, or something. And now we're
definitely in a trillion. Yeah.
And now we're in the area of like 20 to 40 million unaccounted. And I know why that is. And that's pretty much what ties into what I'm telling you now, is that after 1970, these projects, for the most part, and all the funding from 1970 on, all went black.
Yep.
So all black budget,
right.
And that's where it goes. And people play dumb when you're at the Pentagon with Rumsfeld and they go, we really don't know where it went, but we'll look for it. Let you or me, come up short $100 on our taxes, or something of that equivalent, and
they'll be quick.
They're coming to get us. but trillions of dollars, they're like, not a big deal.
Right.
Don't worry about that. So these things have been funded for ages. And it's interesting that we're talking about the rainmaking aspect of it, that some of these projects that consisted of rainmaking were actually used to put out particular forest fires in Alaska, and to stop the hail that I mentioned in Kansas and Midwest and that whole area. And it's common practice to modify the weather above airports that experience heavy fog. So again, we're getting back to the conversation of, this isn't real, and where's your proof? This has been going on forever, and there's tons of proof. Stop arguing with people about white lines in the sky, because this has been going on. And again, the lines are just an aspect of that. So really now we're in the early 70s, and 1973, there was, at least from this gentleman's research, at least 700 degreed scientists working full time on environmental modification. So a lot of people have been involved in this. Some very intelligent, degreed minds, but the compartmentalization of all this, they just deal with it on their own. This is their job, and we don't need to discuss this outside of what we're doing.
Right.
And that's where you come up to a lot of the deaths involved with these kind of operations, the floods, the hail, the hurricanes, the tropical storms. Somebody might want to be held accountable for this once the entire scope of these operations are brought forth in the mainstream. But again, they are in the mainstream. They're online. You can find the proof. We just have to get to that truth. What I found also interesting is that after Vietnam, they started to use phrases like crimes against humanity, and it kind of sat idle and was thrown around a little bit through the early 70s up until 1976. Now, on December 10th, 1976, as a result of the uproar and what people were seeing with the change in the weather, and again, it was public, so they knew about it, over specifically Project Popeye, was that the United Nations actually passed a General Assembly resolution. It was Resolution 3172. That resolution was basically a ban on weather modification, but specifically during wartime. So on one hand, it was like, oh, great, they recognize it and thank God. But it's during wartime. So they've been infringing upon that resolution all this time, because that was the resolution. That is documented, and you can look that up too. And that's been going on for how long now?
Oh yeah. And that's the thing, is they'll come out and say something when there's something happening as big as a war.
Right.
And that's the thing, is nobody's going to pay attention to anything but the war that's going on right now, or at present time, and nobody's going to be really listening to anyone talking about anything, let alone the possibilities of these trails in the sky. I see those pictures, this picture that just popped up, and that's exactly what we see today. Exactly.
And that is, you know, and I have to say, you know, for people who are listening to this, and some are still on the fence about the white line thing, which I guess you've already gotten the idea that I don't want to talk about the white lines too much, because there's a lot more behind that. I can tell you there are certain contrails, which we'll say natural contrails, that do linger longer than others. And that comes down to, you know, the altitude in which it was dispersed, or the barometric pressure, or the overall atmospheric conditions. They will linger, but still at the longest lingering of a normal contrail, which is just frozen, you know, ice particles, basically, still does not, you know, equal what we're seeing here. Now, as you know, the difference between that is they linger, the chemtrails, they widen, they billow, they meet one another, they turn in, you know, a beautiful blue sky like this that we had at 9 a.m. in the morning, and by noon, or, you know, a little bit more afternoon, it's a milky white sky with no sun. Okay, that is not atmospheric, long lingering contrail. That doesn't happen. They don't act like that. If that were the case, I mean, that changes, you know, that challenges physics and every known, you know, theory to mankind for that to happen. That's like somebody saying they put a cube or a stick of butter, real butter, in a hot skillet, and it didn't melt indefinitely. Well, guess what? That's probably not butter. That's
probably not.
That's probably a brick of some kind that looks like butter. It doesn't happen. And, you know, that, again, that argument is thrown out the window. And these pictures here, you know, this is what we're talking about. And everybody sees them. You know, this right here is an exceptionally heavy spray day, as you can see, and they're doing that grid pattern. But no, this is not natural, and this is definitely what we're seeing. And I did want to say this goes into, I wanted to say 1973, there was another project. And again, I want people to write these numbers down, or these names down, or just re-listen to this, because these are all projects that you can look up yourself. Project Storm Fury, Storm, F-U-R-Y, Fury. That project was back in 1971. Again, right, still at the tail end of Vietnam. And that project seeded various hurricanes. And I want to kind of interject here to let people know that we're not seeing the creation of hurricanes, because I know that really throws people off. That's too much. We are seeding, manipulating, and moving and steering these hurricanes. Right. So we're waiting for a real thing. And I hate to say we. These people, the crazy people, the psychopath people, are waiting for this opportunity, and then they inject these hurricanes to steer them and to move them where they wouldn't normally go naturally.
Now, the phenomena of these hurricanes, that's another topic we can get into, because I think it relates to this definitely. With the chemtrails, it's possible that they spray out there, and then they use some other device to manipulate the weather pattern. Now, when I say that, there's a lot of different, I want to say, how do I put it? I mean, there's no other way to put it, but to say, like, there's, from what I understand, they use these waves, like microwave technology.
Correct.
and I believe it's called HARP.
Right.
And HARP is short for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
Exactly. Yep.
So when people use HARP, and then they can use this, it's just a theory that I put together. Maybe it's what's happening is they use chemtrails in conjunction with HARP, and then you see all the formations outside of the United States and the oceans, and it starts coming in, and that's being directed. It's like it's being steered, like you said, and they're using all this technology. Again,
right.
This is being used to create all this, in my opinion, chaos. Because it's sometimes it's not normal. People have argued with me, well, it's hurricane season, it's typhoon season.
Right.
Maybe that's true. I'm not saying that it's not, but it's kind of funny how it's just really sometimes they're out of the ordinary, and it's almost like they're being directed to certain parts of the United States on purpose.
Right. I would agree. And I don't know if you can see, it was pretty synchronistic that you brought that up at that time, Dave. If you can see this slide at all, that right there is the coastline of the Bay Area, and a little bit north to Point Reyes down to, I don't know, it's probably Monterey. And those are all your chemtrail lines right there leading up, coming in from the ocean. And meeting up with our Bay Area coastline. You see San Mateo, Half Moon Bay, Pacifica, that whole area. And this is what you're talking about. You can really see a different pattern in the clouds sometimes when they're using these frequencies, whether it be HARP or something else, that they are pumping frequency into the air, into the atmosphere. Now, I think this slide is more of a picture showing that our California coastline has been sprayed and modified for quite some time to prevent that rain that I was mentioning earlier that we're not getting. They're spraying the coastline. We're getting in the weather systems, and as soon as it hits the California coast, it breaks up. No rain comes from it at all. And this slide shows, and this is, I don't know if it's I don't think it's a Doppler radar thing or it's just a satellite image, but GeoEngineeringWatch.org has a lot of these amazing photos on there. I recommend a lot of people to go to that website. And you're right. I mean, they're playing with the weather, and HARP. Wow, it can even go into the particulates that are being used in the weather modification that our food is drenched in, our bodies. If we're breathing this stuff in, we have heavy metals inside of our bodies, the nanoparticle sized ones. And these particles are heavy metals. Metals are conductive. They're conductive in response to energy waves and frequencies and vibrations. So if these things are being used, they absolutely can have an effect on humans as well. I mean, it's a dangerous game that they're playing here.
We talked about Morgellons as well, and I kind of wanted to share something really quick. I know these images are going to be graphic, so I wanted to give people a heads up ahead of time. If you got a weak stomach, this is probably not going to be for you. So either turn off your monitor, continue listening by all means, but you might want to turn off your monitor because this stuff is really, really graphic. And but what I wanted to also share about this is that this is a very well-known organization called the Mayo Clinic. Everyone's heard of the Mayo Clinic,
right?
And that's something that people people know about. Now, let me see if I can do this. All right, so you can see this as well, Michael. You should be able to see it. And so here is the Mayo Clinic, and it says right there, Morgellons disease, managing an unexplained skin condition. And it goes on to say Morgellons disease, managing an unexplained skin condition. Morgellons disease is a controversial, unexplained skin condition. Here you'll find answers to common questions about Morgellons and just suggestions for coping with it. And it tells you here the signs and symptoms. You know, people who have Morgellons disease report the following signs and symptoms: skin rashes or sores that can cause intense itching, crawling sensations on and under the skin, often compared to insects moving, stinging or biting, fibers, threads, or black stringy material in and on the skin, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, short-term memory loss, depressed mood. Intense itching and open sores associated with Morgellons disease can severely interfere with a person's quality of life. And I bring that up because, again, this kind of disease was not brought into the mainstream until very, very recent. And again, you didn't hear about this until after the phenomena of chemtrails started happening, in my opinion, where people were noticing it more. Right. Again, you know, like I said, you know, growing up in the 70s and 80s, you know, I remember just clear blue skies. You know, if it was a cloud, it was a cloud. It wasn't questioned. You know, getting into the late 90s and 2000s, something else was happening, and, you know, really didn't know what was going on. Now, today, we know from our research that this is definitely some agenda for some reason that is happening, and we don't know what's happening. You know, we can only do our research and dive into it. Right. But that's from the Mayo Clinic, and I'm going to bring up some images. And again, people, please, this is only for research and educational purposes. And if you can't take it, then don't, you know, by all means, don't try to stomach it, because it is horrible. It's horrifying. Right. This is a money fiber, and this is a Morgellons fiber. That's pretty horrendous. I mean, that right there should tell you there's something going on in our bodies that this is. And again, not everybody who has Morgellons has this. Not everybody has come forward to saying that they have Morgellons. But if you have something like this, you might want to get it checked out. Right. You know, or something like this that's coming out of your body. That looks exactly like a wire, like a frayed wire coming out, a fiber. That's right. But it looks like a frayed wire. You know, one of the things I wanted to mention, Michael, is that with Morgellons, I strongly believe that what's happening with this, and possibly with chemtrails also, right, is we may be looking at a transhumanism agenda as well. Yeah, I would agree. For what purpose, I have no idea. Maybe an AI takeover, quite possibly just an integration with man and machine, or some kind of preparation for what's to come. You know, perhaps there is an alien race or species that's going to, you know, try to take over the planet, and we need to be prepared in some sort of way. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's thousands of theories, of course. I was talking to my friend Matt earlier, and he was telling me that he thinks that it's possibly an agenda where these chemtrails are keeping something out. You know, maybe it's keeping out some of the extraterrestrials that's trying to come to our planet. We don't know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But whatever it is, you know, it cannot be just blown off anymore. Like, these are contrails.
Right.
You know, people need to step up and they need to do their research, and they need to accept that this is really, really happening in our world today.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely happening. You know, and there's so many. My screen split here, so give me 1 second. I can only see me now. I can't see you. I don't know what happened with that.
No worries.
But it's boy, I mean, it's a big topic and deep rabbit hole, and there's so many different different ways to go on this. And you know, it could be strictly environmental, it could be multifaceted. You know, while they're doing this, there's other agendas that are being addressed as well. Mm-hmm. There's even been things that have been talked about with dimming the sun, because we are entering a time that the sun is so active that you know, there's a lot of what would I want to say? The CMEs, the coronal mass ejections, the solar flares, the sunspot cycle, things like that. On one hand, there's a group of individuals that would postulate that there may be something with the increased sun activity that is addressing and awakening our pineal gland, our third eye, mm-hmm. Our antenna to God, basically. And why that is significant is because we are in one of the yugas, you know, the end of a cycle, the Kali yugas. You know, we see these in ancient texts that our planet is entering a different place in our cosmos. You know, there's always times of beginning and turmoil and end and amazing things that happen. And you can go back in time and see that a lot of the amazing things in human history coincide with the sacred cycles, or the yugas that they're called. And many people who've done research, they know the yugas that I'm speaking of. We happen to be in the Kali Yuga, you know, coming towards the tail end of that, where it is the Great Awakening. And a lot of that has to do with the sun and what it is emitting, and that is awakening our pineal, awakening our spirit, our spiritualness, if you will. And if there is a power structure out there, the powers that be, that do not want humanity to awaken and become sovereign once again, and to take back their power, take back their, you know, their right, then by all means, you know, they would want to try to find a way to make us a little bit more docile and compliant. And that's been put out there too. Block the sun. We can't have that kind of energy hitting us in our pineal and doing our sun gazing and and strengthening that that part of our spiritual being.
Right.
So there's many things that are being thrown out there to find out what it is. But you know, when I say that, and this is a much bigger topic, somebody's out there waiting for me to mention, you know, he's got to say something about this. He's got to say, if he's done his research, he's got to say something about the solar minimum, the grand solar minimum. Mm-hmm. And what is that? It's a huge topic. I invite people to look that up too, because if you look at mainstream and you talk about climate change and the world is heating up, and you know, we can't argue with the temperatures going on this planet right now. It's ridiculously hot, and it's only going to get worse, type of thing. And people wonder why that our current administration, President Trump, pulled out of the the climate summits and the Paris.
Right.
I believe there's something to that in the sense that somebody may know that our climate situation is not as it seems, and why would we waste our time in millions or billions of dollars of ours that could be just channeled to black budgets once again, when they know that the climate situation is not really as it seems. You could hear that on everyday mainstream news, but when you actually do research, you see nothing but the very opposite, called the grand solar minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And again, long story, the only thing that I'll say, so individuals who are watching this can take it from there, is that it flies in the face of what we're seeing mainstream. And of course, people go, oh, it's just another thing to confuse us all. Not really. This has been around for a very long time, and very credited experts, scientists in this field know about it. They're just not getting on the news and talking about it. So what it is, in a nutshell, the grand solar minimum is upon us right now. It coincides with the sunspot activity of the sun. Traditionally, when you look at heavy sunspot activity, we have very warm temperatures on the planet for a certain amount of time. When there is a lack of sunspots, it's the very opposite. There's a cooling effect. Temperatures drop on this planet. So what we're seeing right now is we're actually seeing all the indications of cooling of this planet, also leaning towards a mini ice age. Sounds insane. People go, well, that goes against everything that I'm learning about and all the things that I'm supporting now. You're saying it's not true? I can't say it's not true. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, there is information out there that is very valid, very researched, and backed up by history that the solar minimum is upon us right now. And we're not being told the truth. And when these things happen, it can affect everything from agriculture to growing food. And that's not even bringing up, solar activity that could knock out the grid for 6 months at a time. Then what are we going to do? But again, I like to say I'm an optimist. Things don't have to reach this point, but people really have to do their research and be vigilant. If it's important to them, research solar minimum or grand solar minimum, and you will see so many things that nobody ever told you about. And I expect people to be pissed off.
Yeah, that's actually, that's to say the least. Is they really should be pissed off. They really should be looking into this more. They need to do this research. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to do this research, and sometimes they just depend on shows like these. But I will say this, if you're going to listen to this show or any other show, program, whatever you want to call it, and try to learn from that, that's great. But if you don't do your own research, you're just going to go out there and you're just going to argue with everyone, and you're going to do your own research.
Right.
That's the important part,
Right.
And I think that if everyone did that, everyone would be better off. There wouldn't be any trolls. We wouldn't have people arguing so much on Facebook.
Yeah, it's true. Because it's something. I'm glad you brought that up, Dave, because I really did want to say this before the end of our time here tonight. It's like the doom and gloom aspect of this, and again, it's the purging, and it's the healing of things that need to be healed.
Mm-hmm.
We have to get to that point, and to get to that point, it is the research, it is the information that is going to set us free. It's not, I just stepped on my own tongue on that one. That's not what I wanted to say. People want to say that knowledge is power, and knowledge is going to set us free. I've changed that over the years, and I know I'm probably sure you've seen the sayings now these days, and I'm wholeheartedly a believer that that knowledge is not what's going to set us free.
Mm-hmm.
The knowledge will not. It's what we do with that knowledge. It's putting that to use. I mean, you could have somebody who is has the most information out of anybody, but if they're not actively using it to assist in a positive way to uplift people, to uplift the planet, that information is useless. So it's not the information itself, it's what you use and what you do to use that information and put it into practice. So right now, at this time, I think in human history, that is one of the things that we are being asked to do. All these things that we've acquired in our spiritual tool belt, if you will, in our relationships, our information, we go through life and we acquire these things. There's going to come a point where we're going to have to put these tools to use to build something better than what we've had. Right now, we're being asked to use that information and those tools to basically save this planet and to save humanity. And I know it sounds like a movie, oh, you saved the planet. You know what? We're there. And these movies that are being made, some of them, not all, but some of them are trying to give us a scenario to show us what that looks like, what that tastes like, what that feels like before it happens. Yeah. People need to pay attention because we're being given an opportunity to learn right now, not only what we want, but especially what we don't want. And we have to work together on this. And like you said, the trolls, put our differences aside. That is the crux of this entire thing that we're talking about right now. We are being asked to do this together.
I agree. I couldn't agree with you more, Michael.
And we're there.
And we're there, man. Actually, we are there. We're at the end. Man, 2 hours flew by again, just like that. So, hey, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. And can you please tell the audience where they can find you and your research and your work?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, pretty much social media in general. Facebook, Michael Freehawk Polani. Also on Instagram, Michael Freehawk. I think I'm the only one on there, Michael Freehawk. So definitely get on there, follow me, shoot me messages, any questions you may have. And I'm steadily working on things. I got a book in progress. It's very slow, but I knew it was going to be that way. Researching every day, doing a little travel, going to speak at some conferences soon, and I'll have more information on that. Or if you want to know where to find me, just message me, shoot me that. And you know what? Again, that's it. We're in this together. And reach out anytime. I'm here. I'm accessible.
Right on. Absolutely. We definitely have those resources, and please get in touch with Michael for anything. He's putting it out there. I want to say happy, New Year to everyone next year. We'll see y'all next year. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And stay strange, everyone. Hasta.
All right.